The secret world of spy satellites, eyes in the sky, the birth of spy satellites. When we think of spies, the image that often comes to mind is a shadowy figure slipping through the night, a trench coat and fedora, documents tucked under an arm. But in the late 1950s, espionage took a dramatic turn. It left the shadows of back alleys and ascended into orbit. The birth of spy satellites marked not just a technological leap, but a fundamental redefinition of intelligence itself. At the dawn of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a tense standoff. Both nations sought every possible advantage, and knowledge of the other's nuclear capabilities was paramount. The Americans, desperate to pierce the Iron Curtain, launched the first true reconnaissance satellite program, Corona. Beginning in 1959, Corona was designed to capture high-resolution photographs of Soviet missile sites, airfields, and military installations. It was revolutionary. Instead of sending pilots like Francis Gary Powers in the ill-fated U-2 spy plane, satellites could orbit hundreds of miles above, immune to anti-aircraft defenses. The technology, however, was almost absurd by today's standards. Corona's satellites carried massive film reels, exposed them in orbit, and then ejected canisters back to Earth. These film buckets re-entered the atmosphere, deployed parachutes, and were caught mid-air by specially equipped planes. It was a system that combined space-age daring with almost comical logistics, but it worked. By 1960, the first successful images were returned, providing intelligence the U.S. had never been able to obtain before. The significance was profound. For the first time in history, nations could peer into the sovereign territory of their rivals without ever setting foot across a border. The concept of national technical means, satellites as legitimate intelligence tools, was born. Corona revealed, for example, that the so-called missile gap that U.S. politicians had feared in the late 1950s was a myth. Soviet capabilities were formidable, but nowhere near the apocalyptic superiority that propaganda suggested. In this way, spy satellites didn't just inform military planning, they calmed political panic. The Soviets, of course, responded in kind. By the mid-1960s, Moscow had launched its own reconnaissance satellites, designed to photograph U.S. missile silos, naval fleets, and NATO infrastructure. A new theater of the Cold War had opened, one where orbits and optics mattered more than disguises and dead drops. As the technology evolved, the capabilities expanded dramatically. Early satellites could see only large installations, but improvements in optics and stabilization soon allowed imagery sharp enough to identify individual aircraft on runways or even count vehicles in a convoy. The once fantastical idea of reading a license plate from space edged closer to reality. This orbital espionage shifted the balance of global power. Leaders no longer relied solely on human spies or intercepted radio chatter. Now, they could confirm, with their own eyes, the movements of divisions, the construction of missile silos, the deployments of fleets. The uncertainty that fueled paranoia could be mitigated, though never entirely erased. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this early era was the sheer audacity of it. Rockets were exploding on launch pads. Satellites were primitive by modern standards, and yet nations entrusted them with the most vital secrets imaginable. It was a gamble, but one that reshaped the way wars were deterred and crises managed. The eyes in the sky had opened. From that moment on, no nation could move entirely unseen. Espionage had expanded beyond human limitations into a new frontier, a silent, ceaseless watch from the heavens. And as the decades unfolded, these satellites would become sharper, faster, and more indispensable, transforming intelligence into a game played not in alleys, but in orbits. Technology beyond imagination. If the first generation of spy satellites was about proving the concept, The decades that followed were about pushing the boundaries of what was possible. What began with grainy black and white photographs returned in parachuting film canisters evolved into a world of breathtaking precision. Satellites capable of peering through clouds, detecting heat signatures, and intercepting invisible signals humming across the globe. By the 1970s, optical technology had advanced to a point where the level of detail captured from orbit was nothing short of astonishing. Cameras the size of buses, equipped with mirrors polished to microscopic perfection, delivered images so sharp they seemed to defy physics. Official figures remain classified, but declassified sources suggest that certain U.S. satellites could resolve objects as small as a baseball on the ground. Imagine standing in your driveway and knowing that hundreds of miles above, a satellite could identify the car you were driving, the direction you were facing, and perhaps even the shadow you cast. Yet optical imaging was only the beginning. Engineers recognized that the Earth's atmosphere, weather, and darkness could limit what satellites could see. The solution was radar imaging. With synthetic aperture radar, SAR, satellites could map terrain day or night, rain or shine. Mountains, forests, and even underground bunkers revealed their outlines. Suddenly, the veil of weather, once a shield against prying eyes, was rendered useless. Thermal imaging added another layer of power. A tank hidden under camouflage netting might fool a human scout, but its heat signature could betray it to a satellite equipped with infrared sensors. Entire troop movements could be tracked not by sight, but by warmth, as engines and bodies glowed against the colder backdrop of the Earth. And then came the true revolution: signals intelligence from space. Spy satellites were no longer just cameras in orbit. They became giant ears as well. By deploying massive antennas, some stretching dozens of meters, satellites could intercept radio transmissions, radar emissions, and even mobile phone signals. Communications once thought secure were swept up, recorded, and analyzed. The sky was no longer just watching, it was listening. Of course, with every leap forward came new dilemmas. Governments faced the delicate balance between what they revealed to the public and what remained tightly guarded secrets. For instance, commercial platforms like Google Earth gave ordinary people a glimpse of the world from above. But what the public saw was a sanitized, downgraded version. Behind closed doors, military satellites were producing imagery that made Google Earth look like a child's sketch. This disparity fueled myths and speculation. Could satellites really read license plates from space? The answer, while classified, is that the truth is probably both less dramatic and more extraordinary. While atmospheric distortion makes it impractical to read something as small as a license plate consistently, the overall fidelity of modern reconnaissance systems means that identifying individual vehicles, weapon systems, or even distinguishing between models of aircraft is not only possible, it's routine. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping element is not the sharpness of the images, but the speed at which they are analyzed. With artificial intelligence integrated into modern platforms, satellites don't just collect raw data. They help interpret it in real time. Algorithms can scan thousands of square miles, flag unusual movements, and even predict potential threats. Where once human analysts pored over film for days, machines now identify anomalies in seconds. The implications are staggering. Imagine a world where a convoy begins moving in the dead of night. Within minutes, an AI-enhanced satellite system could detect the activity, cross-reference it with known intelligence, and alert decision-makers before dawn. This is the new frontier. Not just seeing, but knowing, at the speed of thought. As spy satellites became technological marvels, they also became more fragile targets. Their immense value made them prime objectives in an era of anti-satellite weapons. A single missile or even a cloud of debris could cripple billions of dollars worth of surveillance and blind a nation's strategic eyes. Thus, satellites represent both unmatched capability and acute vulnerability. What began with parachuting film canisters has transformed into an invisible, nearly omniscient system that shapes global security. Every image, every intercepted signal, every data point, adds to a mosaic of knowledge that influences decisions at the highest levels of power. And as we move deeper into the 21st century, these technologies only grow sharper, faster, and more intertwined with the very fabric of international security. Masters of the orbit, who owns the skies? The sky may be vast, but in the world of spy satellites, it is anything but empty. Above our heads, an invisible chessboard stretches across low Earth orbit, medium orbits, and even geostationary positions. Each square is contested, monitored, and exploited by nations eager to dominate this silent battlefield. The question isn't just who can launch satellites, it's who can control the skies. For decades, the United States has been the undisputed leader. With the National Reconnaissance Office, NRO, quietly managing fleets of satellites, the U.S. developed capabilities that gave it unparalleled insight into global affairs. From tracking Soviet missile silos during the Cold War to monitoring terrorist movements in the 21st century, American satellites provided both strategic reassurance and tactical precision. The U.S. advantage lies not only in technology, but also in its global network of ground stations and allies who share intelligence under agreements like the Five Eyes Alliance. This web of cooperation amplifies the reach of American satellites, turning them into the backbone of Western intelligence. But the United States is not alone. Russia, inheriting the legacy of the Soviet Union, maintains a formidable presence in orbit. Although hampered at times by economic struggles, Russia continues to field reconnaissance systems that serve both strategic deterrence and tactical operations. Moscow's satellites watch NATO deployments, U.S. naval movements, and even the skies above Ukraine. While American satellites often symbolize precision and scale, Russian systems are known for resilience and aggressive innovation, designed to function even under hostile conditions. The true challenger of the 21st century, however, is China. Over the past 2 decades, Beijing has surged into orbit with a fleet of advanced satellites rivaling the United States in both quantity and sophistication. China's spy satellites provide coverage of critical areas, from the South China Sea to the U.S. Indo-Pacific deployments. But what makes China's rise especially concerning is its integration of satellite intelligence with cyber capabilities and artificial intelligence, blending orbital espionage with digital dominance. For Washington and its allies, China's growing control of orbital intelligence is perhaps the single greatest strategic challenge of this century. Other nations, too, have carved niches in this crowded sky. France, Germany, Israel, and India all operate reconnaissance satellites, each tailored to their unique security needs. Israel, for instance, relies heavily on satellites to monitor regional threats in the Middle East, while India uses its platforms to keep a watchful eye on its rivals, particularly Pakistan and China. These countries may not possess the scale of U.S. or Chinese fleets, but their satellites provide them with invaluable independence. They are no longer reliant on the goodwill of superpowers for critical intelligence. The race for dominance is not just about numbers, but also about positioning. Satellites in low Earth orbit offer high-resolution images, but cover only narrow swaths of territory at a time. Geostationary satellites, perched 36,000 kilometers above Earth, provide constant surveillance of entire regions, but at lower detail. The choice of orbit is itself a strategic decision, balancing detail, coverage, and persistence. Whoever masters this balance gains an undeniable advantage. Yet this contest is not without risks. Space is becoming crowded, and with crowding comes conflict. Nations are developing anti-satellite weapons, ASATs, capable of destroying or disabling satellites. Russia and China have both demonstrated such capabilities, raising fears of a new arms race in space. The U.S. has responded by creating the United States Space Force, signaling that control of orbit is now a domain of warfare as real as land, sea, or air. Ownership of the skies, then, is less about possession and more about dominance. It is about ensuring that your satellites remain functional, your rivals remain visible, and your secrets remain hidden. In a sense, the new superpower rivalry is written not just in treaties and trade agreements, but in the orbital tracks that cross our heavens every day. Above our heads, the masters of the orbit maneuver, compete, and surveil in silence. The sky has become a battlefield without borders, where invisibility is impossible, and where the balance of global power is reflected in the cold precision of satellites circling the Earth. Shadows of secrecy. Covert operations from space spy satellites are not just passive observers. While their official mission is intelligence collection, history suggests that they have also played a role in some of the most secretive and daring operations of the modern era. From providing the first warning of nuclear tests to supporting covert raids deep in enemy territory, satellites have become silent accomplices in the hidden world of espionage and military strategy. One of the most significant covert contributions of satellites is their role in verifying treaties and exposing violations. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union signed agreements limiting nuclear weapons. But how could either side trust the other? Satellites became the ultimate inspectors, flying overhead without permission, capturing images of missile silos, submarine pens, and weapons factories. These images were rarely made public, but they quietly reassured leaders that agreements were being honored, or revealed when they weren't. Beyond treaties, satellites have supported some of the most daring special operations of the modern era. During the 2011 raid on Osama bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad, satellites provided crucial imagery that helped planners map the site in extraordinary detail. Every wall, every door, every possible escape route was analyzed from space before the first helicopter lifted off. In conflicts from Iraq to Afghanistan, satellite intelligence has enabled covert missions by flagging hidden weapons caches, tracking insurgent movements, and even guiding precision strikes in real time. But satellites also enable espionage in ways less visible, yet equally impactful. Some are designed to position themselves close to other satellites, a form of orbital stalking known as rendezvous and proximity operations. Officially, these maneuvers can be explained as inspection missions. In reality, they can involve spying on rival satellites, intercepting data, or even preparing to disable them in wartime. To the public, the sky may appear serene. To intelligence agencies, it is a theater of constant maneuvering, where satellites shadow each other in silent duels. There are also the darker, more speculative whispers. Rumors persist of satellites with the ability to deploy small projectiles, blind sensors with lasers, or jam communications. While much of this remains classified or unverified, the very possibility feeds a climate of paranoia. In an arena where billions of dollars in national survival are at stake, even the suspicion of such capabilities can alter strategies and force rivals into costly countermeasures. And satellites do more than observe battlefields. They help shape narratives. During the build-up to the 2003 Iraq War, satellite imagery was presented to the world as evidence of weapons programs, some of it convincing, some later discredited. This illustrates another covert dimension: the use of satellite data not only for truth, but for persuasion. Images from space can carry immense political weight, swaying public opinion and international diplomacy. The satellite, in this sense, becomes both spy and storyteller, yet behind every image and intercepted signal are the human operatives who interpret them. Analysts spend endless hours scrutinizing grainy photos, decoding intercepted chatter, and connecting dots that machines alone cannot. Their conclusions, drawn from the silent streams of data from space, often determine the timing and success of covert missions. They are the invisible bridge between the machine's watchful eye and the decisions made in the highest offices of power. But this world of covert satellite operations raises deep ethical questions. Who watches the watchers? How much secrecy is too much in democratic societies? Can leaders manipulate what satellites reveal, or what they claim satellites have revealed, to justify controversial actions. These shadows of secrecy remind us that space-based intelligence is not only a tool of defense, but also a potential weapon of manipulation. What is certain is that covert operations supported by satellites have redefined the limits of espionage. Where once spies risked their lives sneaking into enemy territory with cameras and transmitters, today much of that risk is shifted into orbit, where satellites serve as the ultimate infiltrators. They see without being seen, listen without being heard, and alter the course of events without ever crossing a border. In the hidden war of intelligence, spy satellites are not just guardians of national security. They are silent actors, shaping history from the shadows of space. Tomorrow's Eyes, the future of orbital espionage. As powerful as today's spy satellites are, they may soon look primitive compared to what is on the horizon. The future of orbital espionage is being shaped by advances in artificial intelligence, quantum technology, and the militarization of space itself. The silent eyes above Earth are about to grow sharper, faster, and far more intrusive than ever before. One of the most transformative changes will come from artificial intelligence. Today, satellites generate vast oceans of data, high-resolution images, intercepted signals, radar sweeps, but human analysts can only process so much. AI promises to become the great filter, instantly detecting unusual patterns. A convoy suddenly moving in the desert, a missile being quietly erected in the forest, or even subtle shifts in agricultural fields that might suggest hidden military activity. With AI, what once took days to analyze could take seconds, and the element of surprise in warfare may vanish altogether. But AI is only one frontier. The looming arrival of quantum computing threatens to shatter the security of communications worldwide. For decades, encryption has kept military transmissions safe, but quantum machines could break these codes in moments. Nations are racing not only to develop quantum-resistant encryption, but also to harness quantum satellites capable of transmitting data with near-perfect security through entanglement. An eerie property of physics, where particles remain linked across vast distances. Whoever masters this technology first may dominate the intelligence battlefield for decades. The militarization of space is another stark reality. Already, countries are building anti-satellite weapons capable of destroying or disabling orbital platforms. But the future may bring even more advanced tools. Directed energy weapons, satellites armed with high-powered lasers, or systems designed to hack rivals directly from orbit. The line between spy satellite and weapon may blur, creating a dangerous arms race where the skies become as contested as the seas. At the same time, the rise of commercial space companies is reshaping the landscape. Private firms like SpaceX, Planet Labs, and others now operate fleets of satellites that rival or even surpass those of some nations. These companies sell imagery and data on an open market, raising questions about who controls intelligence when it is no longer the sole domain of governments. The democratization of orbital surveillance could empower smaller nations, corporations, or even individuals, shifting the balance of global power in unpredictable ways. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility lies in the concept of persistent surveillance. Instead of satellites passing overhead only a few times a day, future constellations of hundreds or thousands of small satellites could ensure that no point on Earth is ever out of view. Every movement, every vehicle, every construction site could be monitored in near real time. This constant gaze would provide unprecedented security, but also unprecedented intrusion, challenging the very idea of privacy on a planetary scale. The psychological impact of such capabilities cannot be ignored. Imagine a world where governments know that every missile launch, every military exercise, and perhaps even every political rally is being watched from above. The deterrent effect may reduce conflict, or it may heighten paranoia, pushing nations toward secrecy, deception, or preemptive action. Orbital espionage may not just track wars, It may shape how wars begin or never begin at all. Yet for all its futuristic promise, the future of spy satellites is also fragile. Space debris, growing at alarming rates, threatens to cripple satellites with cascading collisions in what scientists call the Kessler syndrome. Without careful management, the very domain on which global surveillance depends could become unusable, blinding the superpowers who now rely on it. Ultimately, the future of orbital espionage is not just a technological question, but a human one. These satellites, no matter how advanced, serve the agendas of the nations and leaders who control them. Whether they become tools of peace, maintaining transparency and preventing war, or tools of oppression, enabling total surveillance and manipulation, depends on choices made today. Tomorrow's eyes in the sky are already opening. They will see deeper, faster, and further than anything we've known. And in their gaze lies the future of security, freedom, and power on Earth. From the hidden bunkers of the Cold War to the silent satellites watching from above, one thing is clear: the shadows of secrecy are never truly gone. They only evolve. The story of spy satellites is not just about machines orbiting our planet, but about power, trust, and the fragile balance of our world. If you found this journey into the secret world of orbital espionage fascinating, don't let it end here. Hit that like button to help us reach more curious minds. Drop a comment with your thoughts or theories about the future of surveillance. And of course, subscribe to join us for the next descent into the hidden corners of history and technology. Because beyond the visible world, there's always another story waiting to be uncovered. And together, we'll keep pulling back the curtain.